Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets and our co-host Zach Small Cap Research, we are very pleased you have joined us for our quarterly Life Sciences Investor Forum. Our next live presentation is from Therapeutics. Therapeutics is a preclinical biopharmaceutical company dedicated to developing innovative treatments for central nervous system disorders, focusing primarily on anxiety, depression, and dementia. Please note, you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome David Barlow, Chair and CEO, and Alan Cross, CSO of Therapeutics. Welcome, David and Alan.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for the kind introduction and also invitation to present the story. And we also want to thank the attendees for your interest in learning more about Psi and its compelling opportunity. As Greg mentioned, we're focused on CNS treatment and care, and we've got a very compelling mission statement, direction, in which we're developing novel treatments to meaningfully improve the lives of patients and families affected by neuropsychiatric and neurodegenerative disorders. This is clearly a goal where we are developing superior molecules with real differentiation. The opportunity is replete with good dynamics. Unfortunately or fortunately, there are incredibly large markets with significant unmet needs. Psi has a very experienced leadership team and support team to execute on our strategy. We're pursuing an innovative R&D approach, which will become apparent throughout the presentation. And this is all driving to our creation of a robust and focused pipeline, enabling us to really push the science because we are not a one or two asset company. And finally, there is a very clear path to value creation and monetization of our assets. You know, as we think about the market, we have to ask the question about who among us has experienced, either directly or indirectly, a mental health issue. And I think that's a lot of us. And that's just reflective of this huge market with unmet needs. As you see on the left column, PTSD with 13 million, 21 million for depression, 7 million Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and then 50 million plus on chronic pain. And what really motivates us at Psi is that while our first and foremost focus is on the individual patient suffering the disorder, we also are acutely aware that mental health issues impact families, individual families and collectively, and also have an enormous burden on our socioeconomic structure. So this is really a high impact endeavor, and it would be great if you could join along and participate in this, because we have a lot of confidence that we're going to contribute to resolving some of these issues. And how do we get that done? It's through a very experienced and accomplished leadership and support team. Our team is well-versed in neuroscience, CNS drug development, and business building expertise. I'm Dave Barlow. I'm the chair and CEO. I've been in biopharma for over 45 years and have had the privilege of leading several organizations with great teams toward the development of really meaningful therapeutics that have made a difference and added value to patients' lives. And in addition, of course, as goes along with this industry, if you make the patient meaningfully better off, all support groups will equally advantage, including investors, of course. My introduction to neuroscience was in 2001 when I joined the board of McLean Hospital, located outside of Boston, and perennially is the #1 psychiatric hospital in the US. It's also among the top 5 AMCs in psychiatry, departments of psychiatry. And along the way, so I became just completely committed to neuroscience, and I got to know the co-founders, who I'll describe in a minute. But first and foremost, I signed on as the first employee, and we were blessed to have Alan Cross join me soon after. So Alan, if you want to say a few words, he's been doing a phenomenal job leading our discovery and development effort. And then I'll mention our co-founders in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your involvement. My background, I'm a neuroscientist by training. Spent a lot of time in academia and then in pharma. With AstraZeneca, I led the psychiatry discovery and early development work in the States, and I've worked with biotech as well. My commitment here is really bringing strong science to this huge medical societal problem of mental health. And, I think as we look at how Psi is functioning, hopefully you'll see, we can do things in a different way. We can certainly be efficient and effective. But, I think we have a very risk-managed approach to generating really novel treatments across neuropsychiatric and neurodegenerative disorders. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Alan. And very briefly, Jerry Rosenbaum, who was head of Department of Psychiatry at MGH and actually led the building of MGH department to be among the world leaders as a co-founder, as is Maurizio Fava, who has taken over as not only head of MGH Department of Psychiatry, but also the realm within Mass General Brigham, AMC, departments of psychiatry. So we have Jerry's particular expertise is mood disorders and anxiety, and Maurizio is world renowned for depression and also innovative clinical trial design. And these guys are on the job every day and very actively involved. So we're very pleased and blessed that they're on the team. This is augmented by our robust SAB. I'm not going to go through each of these names, but suffice it, Alan is the chair. Each one of these individuals are leaders in the respective fields, were recruited as such, and they're really committed to the success of Psi. They're on the job constantly, and as you do a due diligence, we would make available any and all of these folks to help you get a better understanding of Psi. So that's the core team. It's top notch. It will continue to be so. And I'm going to turn it over to Alan to discuss the R&D approach and some of the programs.
Thanks, Dave. So this outlines the approach that we're taking. Psi was started on the basis of a foundational collaboration with XChem, a chemical screening company with a particular technology, very powerful technology, DNA encoded library screening, which enables one to screen hundreds of billions of molecules at a particular target. And the arrangement was that we could screen 8 drug targets of our choosing through that technology platform. In picking the targets, we were very much aware of the risk of failure downstream through lack of efficacy. So we chose targets that had strong biology, clinical supporting data. In some cases, we could say they were validated targets, but there were clear limitations on current drugs on the market. So that we really had a strong foundation moving forward. A lot of emphasis on in silico methods, not just to make us more efficient, but with a focus on generating compounds of the highest quality, so that when we go into human studies, we're not limited by off-target toxicity, idiosyncratic tox, and we can really fully explore the potential of the compounds. So that's a very brief overview of how we're working. We're a virtual organization. We work through collaborations with a number of outfits. You see that here. XChem is prominent, of course, but we have all of the necessary components we need through the value chain, taking us through to clinical trials. Our agreements with XChem and our screening has completed. So that part of the process is now complete, and our focus is really on building our portfolio and driving our programs forward. And here is the pipeline. So as I said, we were able to screen 8 drug targets, and we're very much aware of the value of having a portfolio. It enables us to make strong decisions. We don't rely on one program that has to succeed at all costs. But of course, the risk is that we spread ourselves too thinly. So these are our focus programs. We have screened all 8 targets. We have chemical equity across those 8 targets. But right now we're focused on these 3 programs. The rest are on the shelf until we feel it's appropriate to bring them into the portfolio. And within these 3 programs, that top one, SIO5, is our priority program. That's where most of our resource and effort is going. So I'll talk in a little more detail about that program. Hopefully that will give you a good idea of how we're working and advancing. And then I'll very briefly mention those other 2. I should say we own all the IP on our compounds, despite those collaborations and so on. We have composition of matter patents issued for the SIO5 program, and we filed patents in the other 2 lead programs there. So coming now to SIO5, where our indication of interest right now is pain. And this is driven in part by the opioid epidemic, the need for non-opioid-based, non-addictive analgesic agents. Of course, this is a huge problem. I don't need to go through that. But it's a very big, broad area. And one of our approaches is to really try and focus down on patient populations where there's a good fit for our programs, where there's unmet need and a clear competitive advantage. So if we look across the continuum of pain states, there's on the left here the acute pain, surgical pain. This is where Vertex and their sodium channel blocker have recently been approved. In the middle there, you see a second group, what we're calling subacute pain. These are the patients who are being released from hospital post-surgery. They come home. There's a reluctance to prescribe opiates. It's very limited. And there are limited options beyond NSAIDs, which really aren't too effective in that patient group. So a lot of unmet need. And we feel this is a clear area where our program will bring benefit. And then looking on the right here, chronic pain, which would include, of course, RA and OA. And again, this is an area where we feel we have a lot of potential, and we will, and I'll go into the reasons for that as we go through some of the other slides. But our immediate focus is on that subacute pain patient population where we feel we can bring benefit, and we're clearly differentiated from the sodium channel blockers. And just a brief comment on that. We don't see the approval of the Vertex compound as anything other than a great thing for the field. It shows that we can bring as a field, we can bring new medicines forward, that our approach has some validity. It opens up the area for us. But I think it's clear to everyone that this will not solve the entire issue around pain control. And we feel we're certainly in a somewhat differentiated position to the sodium channel blockers. So the approach that we're taking is based on the clinical evidence and the preclinical supporting biology around the effects of cannabinoids in pain and other indications. We're not in the business of making analogs of THC or other cannabinoids. Our approach is to modulate the endogenous system in the brain, the endocannabinoid system. And our target is an enzyme in that system that I'll describe in a little more detail in the next slide. The advantage of doing that is that we can be more selective, we're more relevant physiologically, and I think most importantly, we can produce sustained efficacy without the development of tolerance, which is the main issue with the efficacy of certainly THC. Tolerance develops very rapidly. You have to keep increasing the dose, and eventually the effects wear off. And we have data with our compounds, and there's data in the literature to support the avoidance of tolerance. So the target in the system is this enzyme, monoacyl glycerol lipase, MAGL. It's involved in the breakdown of the main endogenous cannabinoid in the brain, 2-AG. So by inhibiting this enzyme, we increase 2-AG in the brain, potentiate the effects of endocannabinoids. We also reduce the production of arachidonic acid. So in addition to the antinociceptive effects, we also have an anti-inflammatory effect as well. And this gives us a clear advantage over many other approaches with this dual mechanism of action. And as I mentioned previously, it gives us, I think, really interesting opportunities in chronic pain where inflammation is important. So in pain, we see benefits around improved and sustained efficacy. And of course, we'll avoid the potential for abuse, misuse. And we also have the potential to treat opiate withdrawal as well. We're also interested in a second area, PTSD. And again, there's very good clinical evidence supporting this. The main effects of cannabinoids in PTSD are on sleep disruption. And this gives us, I think, a very interesting way forward, as we can use sleep EEG as a marker. We don't rely on subjective measures. We have an objective measure of efficacy, and we're bringing forward that plan as well. So where are we with this program? As I said, the screen was very successful, one of the most successful screens we've run. We had a lot of chemical equity. We've developed that through lead optimization. We have identified our first drug candidate, which is entering IND-enabling studies. So we're about a year away from IND and then phase 1 studies. As I said, we have composition of matter patents allowed. We have also used these compounds in a number of other initiatives. We're participating in the pain therapy screening program and the epilepsy screening program at NIH. And that will provide us with a lot of, I think, supporting data for the pain program, and may also give us some interesting data in epilepsy as well, where again, there is good clinical evidence. And we have grants submitted to NIH around non-addictive pain and for sleep disturbance in PTSD. So, and we do have a number of other areas that we could pursue here, but of course we need to maintain our focus moving forward. In terms of the competition, modulation of endocannabinoids has been a fairly active area. Most of our competitors there chose a different target, a different enzyme, and they used irreversible inhibitors to address that enzyme. So we're in a relatively clear space here with MAGL inhibition, and with reversible inhibition, we've already shown that we avoid that development of tolerance and can generate sustained efficacy. There are, of course, a lot of activity around cannabis, cannabinoids, formulations, and so on. And that has been very useful in terms of generating a lot of clinical data to support our programs. But we don't see that there's much more that could be done in that area. And we certainly feel that we're in a quite separate space to them. So in a good, I think, competitive position there. So that is our main program. In terms of the other two programs, very quickly, SCI-01 is addressing the non-motor and motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease, and with a particular interest in depression in Parkinson's disease. It's based on, pardon me, a validated drug target where there are severe toxicity and other problems with those compounds that we can avoid by designing our screens in the appropriate way. So we have a novel set of compounds which avoid those components of the compounds that are responsible for toxicity. Because this is a validated target, it's a low-risk approach. There is supporting clinical data for the efficacy in depression. And we're in the middle now of lead optimization there. And this program is supported in part by a grant from NIMH to bring forward the interest in depression. So and that is an important part of our strategy, not just in terms of non-dilutive funding, but to enhance that scientific credibility through the award of competitive grants. And then finally, our third program there targets tau, targets tauopathies. That includes Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. The target here is, as I said, tau. If there's one thing that we've learned in addressing these types of disease-modifying therapies and protein aggregation, you really need to interact at the earliest stage of protein aggregation. And in this case, that is tau oligomers. So we screened against, I think, a very interesting preparation of tau oligomers. And we've got some active compounds from that. Now, I think the important point here is this formation of these low molecular weight tau oligomers occurs within neurons. So a small molecule approach where you can get your compounds into neurons has clear advantages over biologics, which you can get into the brain, but getting them into neurons in the right place in neurons is really challenging. So we have identified this series of small molecule tau binders. We've shown that they prevent aggregation in cell-based systems, including iPS-derived neurons. And we're currently running these compounds in some in vivo proof of principle studies in transgenic mouse models. And that, again, is funded by a grant, this time from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And I think that will be a very important study in terms of not only giving us a proof of principle, but also maybe steering us in the direction that we can take with this program. Would we go for a genetically defined subgroup of tauopathies, or do we have to go in a different direction? So with that, I'll hand you back to Dave and we can talk.
Thanks very much, Alan. We're proceeding with a three-pronged strategy for financing. Of course, equity is the major component of it. And we've thus far completed a seed round, a bridge convert, and we have an open convert with a target of $10 million, and we've raised over $4 million. So this is something that I want to focus on in the next slide or two. This is the opportunity to become part of the Psi mission. In addition, as Alan has articulated, we have an intentional grant and non-dilutive financing strategy, which has yielded $2 million thus far, and there's actually more to come. We do not budget grant awards in our business planning. So when they come, then we have the appropriate plans ready to go, but we're not depending on those. And then finally, corporate partnerships, which has really accelerated over the last 2 years. It's fair to say that CNS is back as a priority effort for Big Pharma. Big Pharma is back, and it's publicly stated so. And there's a very high need for assets. And pharma corporations are wide open to collaborations with those companies that have assets that would fit their portfolios. So we're in active discussions, and I don't want to suggest a deal is around the corner at this stage. But if you fast forward into 26, there's real probabilities because we're staying with these relationships. There are data milestones that will drive them further, and we anticipated having corporate partnerships for some of our assets. The remaining 6 million in the convert is going to do a couple things. One, it will enable our program 05 to get to the doorstep of initiating clinical trials. So the IND will be submitted. This is a major value inflection point within the industry to get into the clinic. In addition, we'll flesh out, initiate IND enabling studies for our 01 program and continue to advance the very interesting Tau program. All of this is really a terrific stage setter for a high quality Series A, which we would anticipate clearly within the next 18 months. And we have active discussions with related companies that we'd like to work with, but we do have to go through the turnstile of proceeding on get the 05 to the clinic. And then we make a huge transition. With the A, just to give you a sense for trajectory, because their companies are being purchased in this area for billions of dollars. Karuna, who you may be familiar with, had essentially one asset that was at the FDA for schizophrenia, and they were purchased by BMS for $14 billion. Cerevel, another one, with pre-approved drugs in phase 2, they were purchased for $8.7 billion, and the list goes on. So this is demonstrating that the environment is ripe for the kind of strategy and execution that Psi has to deliver. So with the Series A, which is already planned out, we would further move down the track of deeper clinical trials, and then we would be clearly positioned as a clinical stage CNS company with a deep pipeline, and the options multiply from there. So the question is, why invest in Psi now? It's really a great opportunity because the market dynamics have moved in our favor. These weren't evident 2 years ago. So the trends are, and they're sustainable. You know about the high market opportunity, tons of need, big markets. Psi has a particular risk mitigated, differentiated pipeline. There are ample opportunities for our drugs to be developed and find a place in the market. And we have clear near-term value inflection points that we'd love to share with you in person. The one being, of course, the 05 within the next 12 to 15 months getting into the clinic. And happily, there are now biomarkers and other technologies enable us to present really interesting preclinical data, which could also help move programs and value creation. Finally, the world-class team and partnerships that we have in place and will continue to expand. We've done this before, and we have every expectation to repeat those previous successes and even surpass them. And the timing, as I alluded to earlier, it's excellent, because if you come in now with the convert price tag, we're 18 months away at most from a Series A, where given the status of the company at that point, we would anticipate a probability of a significant increase in valuation. So now is the time. We'd love to talk to you. If you want to continue the conversation, there's notes here, and also we can engage with meetings. And why don't we take a few questions? We'll open it up, and whatever on your mind. Be happy to take them.
We have less than a minute for questions, and there's actually quite a few questions here that came in during the presentation, which hopefully we've answered. What I would say is our contact details are on the slide here, and we're very happy and interested in answering any of those questions. I think the one question that we could address is, how do we see the opportunity to work with Big Pharma? And maybe Dave, you could just quickly comment on that.
Yeah, well, to work with them, they're very flexible these days in terms of the type of deal structure. But take one would be, let's say they would make an equity participation in the company and then have a right and have funds dedicated to a particular project with very specific milestones, and at each one of those milestones, they would have a right to continue on, an option, so to speak. I could go through a plethora of opportunities with Big Pharma. There's also the pure acquisition. So if you fast forward 3 to 5 years from now and consider where we'll be with our assets, that's not an unlikely outcome, because Big Pharma need to build their pipelines. They have a hearty appetite for working with emerging companies these days, which we expect to continue. And I'd be happy, offline to go through a number of possibilities, but suffice it to say the market is ripe for healthy and mutually beneficial collaborations with Big Pharma.
Great.
And I believe that is time, unfortunately. So we want to thank all of you for joining us today. And we really have an open door policy. So we'd love to see you by Zoom or meeting in Boston and or email. But send us your questions, and let's continue your exploration of Psi as a terrific and timely opportunity. So thank you again for attending today.